welcome to Talk Truth. My name is Corey Huntsberger. I've got my father, Alan Huntsberger, in the studio. We're going to start off with our foundational verse, as we always do. The earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants, belong to the Lord. For he laid its foundation on the seas and established it on the rivers. Psalm 24, 1 and 2. It's foundational. It's how we start our day every day to remind us that the earth and everything in it, the world and all its inhabitants, that's from the creatures to the people, belong to the Lord. So ultimately, God is in control, right, Dad?
Yeah, he is. And, you know, if we don't remind ourselves of that on a daily basis, we can get fearful. We can lose confidence. We can be afraid, especially if elections don't go the way we think they should go, or the people that we elect don't do what we think they should do. You know, I mean, you know, you can look at it in all kinds of ways. The beautiful thing is that when you look at it, that the earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord, you know that he is sitting on the throne. And even though he lets evil rule, it's partly because of we the people, but it's also partly because we have a tendency not to get involved in how we're supposed to be as people of Christ, God's holy people. And that's the important thing.
Everyone doing their part. That's the important thing. Whatever that part is, however the Lord wants you to play it, it's important. And the person that plays their part really well is Bigtree. We've been watching his movie. It's called The Inconvenient Study, I think. We're on part 2. If you missed the first part, go back to yesterday's show, watch that. Fascinating information in here, Alan, to get in more depth. And let's just watch it, and then you and I can comment afterwards. Watch this.
What you should do when there are widespread complaints that a product is causing a given harm is you should study it.
Vaccines should be tested like other medicines. They should be safety tested. And unfortunately, vaccines are not safety tested. Of the 72 vaccine doses now mandated, essentially mandated, they're recommended, but they're really mandated, for American children, none of them, not one, has ever been subject to a pre-licensing placebo-controlled trial.
Health and Human Services Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr. has been torn apart by mainstream media for saying that there's no placebo trials being done for vaccines. But he's right. It's exactly what we found in our lawsuits against the government. Not a single childhood vaccine is going through a double-blind, randomized, placebo-controlled trial prior to licensure. That's the gold standard of safety testing for all pharmaceutical products, but is being skipped for vaccines. In case you forgot how a double-blind, placebo-based trial worked as we discussed it back in high school science class, let me remind you. We break up a group of kids into 2 groups. One group is going to get the vaccine. The other group is going to get a placebo, which is a product that has no effect on the human body. When it comes to an injectable like vaccines, that is a saline injection. Then it's called double-blinded because both the scientists and the patients are blinded from knowing which one they got. Did they get the vaccine or did they get the placebo? This is so that the scientists will not manipulate the study in favor of the pharmaceutical industry that will stand to make a lot of money if this vaccine proves to be safe. Then we track these 2 groups for 2 to 5 years, sometimes as long as 10 years for a lot of drugs. And at the end of that study, we unblind both the patient and the scientist. So we look at both groups, the vaccinated and the placebo group, and we compare their health outcomes. Who had more cancer? Who had more diabetes or ADD, ADHD or autism or Tourette's or lupus or multiple sclerosis? All of these things that are currently skyrocketing in the United States of America. And if, when you compare them, they both turn out the same, there's the same amount of issues in the vaccinated group as is in the placebo group, then you know it's safe. You've established what we call a safety baseline. But if the vaccinated group has more issues than the placebo group, then we know it's not safe and it shouldn't be put on the market. Only one problem. Not a single vaccine on the childhood schedule has ever been through a double-blind, placebo-based trial. Therefore, they cannot say the vaccines are safe based on science.
Are all vaccine trials placebo-controlled? No, and nor should they be. So, for example, when Prevnar 13, so Prevnar was a conjugate pneumococcal vaccine.
The FDA has approved a new pneumococcal vaccine.
It had to be tested in the phase 3 trial, and so the control group there was Prevnar 7 and had been shown to work.
It will replace Prevnar, which was effective against 7 serotypes.
You can't ask parents to put their children at risk of pneumococcal disease when there existed on the market at the time a vaccine to prevent that. And the World Health Organization has been very clear on this. That would have been considered an ethical trial.
Dr. Paul Offit's one of the big proponents of vaccinations, probably because he's made a vaccine and made a killing off of it, the rotavirus vaccines on the childhood schedule.
It doesn't matter whether I financially benefited or not.
He likes to go around and say, well, we can't always do placebo trials, especially if there's already a vaccine that covers that disease. So he'll use an example like Prevnar 13. Prevnar 13 in its safety trial was tested against Prevnar 7, the earlier version of the vaccine. And he'll say you cannot test Prevnar 13 against a saline placebo because it would be unethical. You'd be denying children access to a vaccine that is already on the market, and that's not fair to them. But what he leaves out is that Prevnar 7 was never tested against a saline placebo, so we don't know if it's safe. So we're testing one product we don't know the safety profile on with another product we don't know the safety profile on, and this is how the entire vaccine schedule works. I like to call this the whiskey study. Let me explain. Let's say there's a group of people that are complaining that whiskey is making people drunk and they're crashing their cars and people are getting killed. Now, in order to test does whiskey cause car accidents, you would set up a double-blind placebo trial. One group, the test group, would get the 10 shots of whiskey. The other group, the placebo group, would get 10 shots of water. And then we'd have them both drive on a driving course and see who has more accidents. It's obvious. But in this case, the whiskey company is the one doing the study. And what they say is, oh, we're going to do a placebo-based trial, but our placebo-based trial is not going to be water, it'll be vodka, another product already on the market. And so 10 people get the whiskey shots and 10 people get the vodka shots, and they had them all drive, and guess what? They had just as many car accidents. Therefore, whiskey does not cause car accidents because it didn't cause any more than the vodka did. And so to take this all the way to the end of Dr. Paul Offit's point, if vodka had ever been tested against 10 shots of water and there was no car accidents in the vodka group, then it would make sense to test the whiskey against the vodka. But we all know that study was never done, just like no vaccine placebo study was ever done. All you have to do is type in FDA licensed vaccines on your computer, and every vaccine that they give your child on the childhood schedule will appear there. And then you can click on any one you're interested in. Let's click on Recombavax HB. This is one of the hepatitis B vaccines they give your baby on the first day of life. Hello, welcome to the world. Gasp for your first breath, and here comes your first sexually transmitted disease. Now, go to Vaccine Insert. This is the insert or the warning label that is wrapped around the vaccine when it's delivered to your doctor. It has all kinds of information, like what's in the vaccine, all the ingredients, side effects of the vaccine, but I want you to focus on section 6.1. This is where they talk about the clinical trial they relied upon to establish safety. It's always 6.1 on every single vaccine, so you can look at all of them. But in this one, you'll see that there was only 147 children in the entire trial. And they were only monitored for 5 days after each dose. 5 days. So think about it. Would you take any drug that was only monitored for safety for 5 days? If your child dies on day 6, it wasn't captured by this trial. They'll say, we didn't see any deaths. If a child had autism 2 years later, or other autoimmune diseases or neurological disorders, things that take years to develop, they'll say, we didn't see any in our trial. This is why every drug we take goes through a multi-year safety trial. Most of your issues are going to take years to develop, and if your study isn't that long, you'll never, ever see them. We had an interesting opportunity to talk about this with Dr. Stanley Plotkin, who's considered to be the reigning godfather of our vaccine program.
Dr. Stan Plotkin.
Dr. Plotkin.
Virtually every country in the world is affected by his vaccines.
Like the rubella vaccine, the rotavirus vaccine, rabies.
He trained just a generation of scientists, including myself, to think like he thinks.
He developed the standard textbook for vaccines in 1988.
Bill Gates calls his book a Bible for vaccinologists.
I hope it's more accurate than the Bible.
In 2018, our attorney, Aaron Siri, had the opportunity to depose under oath Dr. Stanley Plotkin, and he asked him this exact question: is a 5-day safety trial long enough to capture all of the side effects that people are complaining about from the hepatitis B vaccine?
Dr. Plotkin, this is the product, the manufacturer insert for Recombavax HB, correct?
Yes.
And the clinical trial experience would be found in section 6.1, correct? Correct? Dr. Plotkin?
Yes.
Okay. In section 6.1, when you look at the clinical trials that were done pre-licensure for Recombavax HB, how long does it say that safety was monitored after each dose?
Let's see. Uh, 5 days.
Okay. Is 5 days long enough to detect an autoimmune issue that arises after 5 days?
No.
Is 5 days long enough to detect any neurological disorder that arose from the vaccine after 5 days?
No.
There is no control group, correct?
It does not mention any control group, no.
No. If you turn to section 6.2, under the nervous system disorders, it states that there have been reports of Guillain-Barré syndrome, correct?
Yes.
As well as multiple sclerosis, exacerbation of multiple sclerosis, myelitis, including transverse myelitis, seizure, febrile seizure, peripheral neuropathy, including Bell's palsy, muscle weakness, hypothesia, and encephalitis, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, it
before
says at the top,
before you go on, these reports are required to be included because they have been reported to the authorities as happening after vaccination. That is not proof that the vaccine caused those reactions.
in order to establish whether it's causal between the vaccine and the condition, you need a randomized placebo-controlled study. But
yes.
That was not done for this hepatitis B vaccine before licensure, was it?
No.
Okay.
Without a control group, if you're looking for a phenomenon occurring in the vaccine group, you cannot judge that phenomenon without having a control group.
Isn't it true that it would now be considered unethical to conduct such a study today?
It would be, yes, it would be ethically difficult.
So this is how the entire game is played. They don't do a safety placebo trial before the vaccine's licensed. Then when people start lining up with all of these serious side effects, you say, well, can you do a placebo-based trial now? And they'll say, no, it's unethical. So they won't do it before, they won't do it after there's injuries, and when they can't do a study, your doctor says to you, I haven't seen any studies that show that these injuries are being caused by the vaccine. Therefore, I'm going to assume they're safe.
Do you agree with the CDC's recommendation that babies receive a hepatitis B on the first day of life?
Yes.
You stated that hepatitis B doesn't cause encephalitis, right?
That's in my opinion, yes.
But the IOM, after doing its review, determined it couldn't find science to support a causal determination one way or another. Correct?
Yes. But that means that they don't have evidence for the supposition.
That it either causes or doesn't cause.
Right.
They don't know.
They don't know because there aren't enough data. In the absence of data, my conclusion is that there's no proof that the causation exists.
So if there's no data to show that it causes or it doesn't cause,
yes.
Your supposition, is that I understand correctly?
Yes.
Is that it doesn't cause it?
That there's no proof that it does.
Okay. That's different than saying it doesn't cause it, correct?
Correct.
So let's be clear. Vaccine safety is not based on science and data. It's based on an assumption of safety. And that is the stalemate we find ourselves in. But there's one way out of it. Instead of doing a placebo-based study, you can do a retrospective study looking at people that have already made their choice, whether they're going to vaccinate or not. And then you just compare those groups, the ones that got the vaccines and the ones that decided not to vaccinate. We call that the vaccinated versus unvaccinated study. It's been done by a few independent scientists and institutes amongst small groups of children, but never by a major government agency or a major medical facility. The reason this study is important, I think, is illustrated by a study that was done in Guinea-Bissau, Africa, by a man named Dr. Peter Abe. He's one of the lead experts. He's pro-vaccine, and he develops vaccine programs for the third world. He had a DTP vaccine program he'd run 30 years ago in Guinea-Bissau, Africa, and recognized 30 years later, you know what, only half the children in the country got that vaccine and the other half didn't. I could do a perfect comparative study between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And when he did that study, the results blew his mind.
This is about vaccines, and I think it's important to recognize that no routine vaccine was tested for overall effect on mortality in randomized trials before being introduced. I guess most of you think that we know what our vaccines are doing. We don't. The program we are talking about at the time, the vaccine program, was introduced sort of in the late 70s after the success with the eradication of smallpox. WHO made sort of the first immunization program for the low-income countries. What comes out here, you had 2.3 times higher mortality if you are DTP vaccinated. And that is the most commonly used vaccine in the world. So the whooping cough vaccine or pertussis vaccine was associated with twofold higher mortality. You can have a vaccine which is fully protective against a specific disease, but associated with higher mortality. How is that possible?
After looking at this study, it was clear that the vaccine did protect against the diseases they were vaccinated for. The kids didn't die of diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. Only one problem. Once they looked at it, they were dying at 5 times the rate of all of these other issues. So it was clear that though it was protecting against these diseases, it was weakening their immune systems to all sorts of other problems. One of the other scientists on this study did a TED Talk on this.
In spite of being protected against 3 deadly diseases, the introduction of DTP was associated with increased overall mortality. Children who received DTP vaccine had 5 times higher risk of dying than those who didn't. And this is just one example of many studies now done of DTP vaccine, and they all show the same. DTP vaccinated children have higher mortality than those who didn't get DTP. So it appears that DTP vaccine has negative non-specific effects. The protection against the 3 deadly diseases comes at a very high price, namely increased risk of dying. So, with the best of intentions, the use of DTP vaccine may kill more children than it saves. I know these results are extremely uncomfortable, and most people, including myself, just wish they weren't true. But this is what the data tells us.
That was just a study of one vaccine in a group of children. What if you studied children that were receiving not one vaccine, but between 72 and 100 vaccines by the time they're 18? Of course, I'm talking about the most vaccinated nation in the world, the United States of America.
Our federal health authorities actually paid the Institute of Medicine to look at the safety of the vaccine schedule as a whole. And the Institute of Medicine, after conducting that review, came back with a report in 2013. The report said no studies have compared the differences in health outcomes between entirely unimmunized populations of children and fully immunized children.
It's the CDC's responsibility to do those studies, and they've been ordered again and again and again to do them, and they have refused. But the Institute of Medicine has looked at the vaccine schedule and said in their 2011 report, there are over 150 injuries that are likely to be associated with vaccines that have never been studied.
Well, what did the CDC do after the Institute of Medicine issued that report?
Instead of doing the study, they ended up doing a study on how to do a vax versus unvax study.
It went and it paid a whole lot of money to issue a white paper on how to conduct that study comparing vaccinated versus unvaccinated kids. That white paper came out in 2015. Now, here we are in 2025, 10 years later. They've still never published that study. Now, have they never done the study? I can't tell you.
This is information that vaccine safety advocates want and have been asking for a long time, and I'm not sure why it hasn't been done.
This simple study would shut up every anti-vaxxer forever. I have to believe that they have done this study every way they possibly can, and they can't seem to figure out how to make it look like the vaccinated are healthier. But that's just my opinion, based on several other studies I've seen that did compare vaccinated to unvaccinated, but mainstream medicine says, well, the cohort was too small, or they poke holes in it saying it wasn't done by a major medical institution. So if we're ever going to get a vax versus unvaccinated study that people believe in, it's going to have to be done by highly credited scientists at a major medical institution who has a database big enough to do a thorough, robust investigation comparing the vaccinated to the unvaccinated.
As fate would have it, Dell met the head of infectious disease at Henry Ford Health System, Marcus Servos.
Alan, we're going to pick up the rest of the story tomorrow. Fascinating stuff. I love how Del Bigtree thinks. I love his investigative journalism style. He's just so clear. It's clean. It makes sense. Your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are how we have been so customized to the propaganda in believing that the medicines and in vaccines and all that kind of stuff do work and they are safe. That even when you hear a report like this, it's hard to get your head twisted around to the fact that over the last several decades, even over a half a century, people have been giving vaccinations and making a ton of money and have no idea what the causes happen after those vaccinations are given. And I'll give you a case in point of myself. I had what they call congestive heart failure. According to Dr. Judy, there isn't such a thing, but I had it. And I got taken to the hospital. They did all the tests. My veins, everything else was clear, blah, blah, blah. The doctor, the cardiologist came up and told me he has no idea what caused my heart condition. So what happened is they gave me a bunch of chemicals and pills and whatever to take to keep my blood pressure right and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, we started getting involved in our program, and I start learning about all these natural things that we can take that will help us. And so I started getting involved with that. And now I am today almost at the end of weaning myself off of some of the prescriptions that were given to me and stay on the natural immunity systems that I've been taking every day. But I can honestly tell you that if you feel strange or something happens a day or whatever, it's because you stop taking those pills. And what happens is you have a tendency to get back on those pills again because your faith and confidence is in those pills.
I think what upsets me the most is, and I'm sure there's some people going, guys, why are you still talking about this? And it's like, so my answer to that is because we care. We have witnessed families that they've taken their kids in, something's happened. Now those kids are damaged for life. There's been mortality. The information there said that DCP protected from diseases, yay, but also increased mortality. So we care, and we want to take the time and the effort, like all these other people, to do the research, to find a way that's safe, to truly be safe and effective, if that's possible. And what a lot of people do is they don't like us talking about this topic, and so they call you anti-vaxxer or conspiracy theory. You know what? If you don't care about people and their safety and the families and the children that have been damaged, just get out of the conversation. Just go sit in the corner, be quiet. Let the adults talk and figure out a way that this can be safe for everyone. So we limit the damage, we limit the autism, we limit all these horrific effects that it is proven, written on their own information, that it can cause, and it has caused, damage to people and children for their entire lives. That's my thing. This is why we're talking about it, because we want to encourage those that are in charge, those leading scientists and investigative journalists and doctors, to figure it out, to just not turn a blind eye. But because Christ lives in us and he tells us to love our neighbor, we care about people that damage themselves. And we want to figure out what's wrong, what's happening. That's why we're having the conversation. If you've got no input besides you're an anti-vaxxer and a conspiracy theorist, great, noted, sit down. Let the adults finish their investigation and the conversation and figure out a way. Is there a way to do this so less children get hurt, less children die? That's why we're on this topic. And we're going to continue to roll on this topic, Dad. We're running out of time. We got to get into your booklet. But watch tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be fascinating, too. It'll be part 3. We're giving away a book called Living in Truth. It's a devotional study on 1 Peter chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. Alan pulls some gold from 2 verses, everybody. 2. He is the golden goose. He can pull gold eggs out of anything, and he did out of these 2 verses. You'll want to get your booklet at gotalktruth.com. Click on resources, fill out the form. We'll send one to you in the mail, absolutely free. If you want to help support our mission, keep this kind of conversation and truth on the air, we are viewer supported. You can go to our website, gotalktruth.com, click on donate, many different ways to give digitally there. And that's important because we've had 2 mail strikes in this last year from Canada Post. And so mail is, so-so. So doing it digitally, supporting us digitally would be amazing. If you'd like to still do it through the mail, we appreciate that as well. You can send your gift to Talk Truth, and the address is 246 Stewart Green Southwest, Suite 3260, Calgary, Alberta, T3H3C8. And if you'd like prayer, you can call our toll-free number, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Someone will pray with you. All right, Dad, we're out of time. We'll see you guys later.
Love you.